Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Feria. I work in the admissions office. I'm the grad recruitment coordinator. With us today, we have the Center for Arts and Language, and I will turn it now over to Jennifer Leese to do the introductions.
Terrific. Thanks, Jen. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Center for Arts and Language presentation. We're going to let you know today about the center itself and the tutoring that we do around communication for all RISD students, and also about the graduate written thesis, which if you do end up attending RISD will be a big part of your life here, and also about V1 or Volume 1, which is our student publishing platform or newspaper. So the Center for Arts and Language is virtually behind me. This is in the library, and maybe you've seen the presentation of with the library staff. It's right in the center of campus, right on the river, and we have this big open space where we conduct tutoring sessions and have programs and readings and so on. And it's a beautiful space just to sit and work and read and write and do the kind of deep thinking that communication around your work and ideas asks for. The mission of the Center for Arts and Language is to fortify and amplify artists and designers' voices at RISD and in the world. And we do that expansively by thinking about the way that you talk about your work, the way that you write about your work and ideas, the way that you design your words visually. We have a lot of attention to multilingual learning. There are a lot of multilingual students at RISD, and we work quite a lot with those folks. And we think also about publishing and how you get your voice and ideas out into the world. So that's the sort of broad scope of what we do. We're going to invite you guys to ask questions at any point through the Q&A function. Is that right, Jen? That's how they'll see it?
That's correct. Yep.
Great. So go ahead and ask questions at any point, but we're going to go through this in 3 parts. I'm going to talk with Irina first because Irina is in Seoul, South Korea, and 12 or now 13 hours ahead of us and ready for bed. Irina, thank you for being here tonight, tonight. So Irina was an editor of Volume 1, which I'll show you here. Whoops, I think if I hold it in front of me, it won't disintegrate. Yeah, there we go. Here's one issue of Volume 1. Another, you can see it's sort of a newspaper, but I'll share some screens as well from our website. So Irina will talk with us about Volume 1, and then Ali will talk with us about tutoring in the Center for Arts and Language, and then Ann West, who's a longtime faculty member and mentor to graduate students, will share with you a little bit about the graduate written thesis and do a couple of writing prompts with you to kind of get some ideas flowing. So again, ask questions at any time. And Jen, if you could alert me if one shows up, I'm afraid I might not notice.
You got it.
Thank you. Okay, so Volume 1, V1, is the student publishing platform. And it's a standard conventional sort of newspaper that comes out twice a year, typically, sorry. And I'll show you the website now and just give you a little overview of the kind of pieces that we publish. Whoops, there we go. Share screen, there we go. So I should probably be showing you our main site first. So volume-1.org is the home page. Irina, we just did a big redesign. So the interesting thing about this publication is that it's not one consistent thing, the way the New Yorker has looked the same forever, or the New York Times, or typical magazines and publications, or even websites. The face and the content and the vibe of Volume 1 changes from year to year as new groups of student editors take over and remake it according to the times. So last year we had a very significant and sudden shift to not working in print, but just online when students left campus in the spring. And we're also printing this year, but we're mostly publishing online. And you can see the call for submissions here. We do publish work by non-RISD students or by alumni or by students who are interested. So if you're interested in submitting something, I actually welcome that. The pieces I just want to share with you quickly, here's one by a recent graduate alum named Elizabeth Berman. Just to show you the range of publications. She was talking with other editors about having made a cake and failing in making this cake and thinking, in fact, pie is a much more forgiving baking project. That's a really simplified version of this wonderful story that is sort of a personal narrative integrated with imagery where she also connects it to her work itself. So that's one. Sort of creative nonfiction. This is a piece by another graduate student, Marcus Peabody, who last year was living in Brooklyn in the spring and decided to map the various neighborhoods around him in New York and then in Rhode Island as well to see where so-called social distance could be best achieved. And last, I'll share with you Irina's own piece, which was written right as campus was dispersing. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the piece, Irina, but it's a meditation on what it means to be in the studio and out of the studio as a graduate student. I'm going to put this one in the chat because I would love it if you all were interested in reading it. I want you to be able to find it easily. So I'm going to stop share now and just put Irina's piece in the chat so you can find that. You can find other pieces there as well. So again, Irina, thank you so much for being here. And I wanted to ask you to share a little bit about your experience with V1 and sort of what drew you to becoming a graduate assistant student editor of the publication. So maybe, you know, sort of how did you get your start there and what was it that drew you to that as part of your graduate experience?
Yeah, also, hi, Jen. I haven't seen you in ages, so it's so nice to see you. Yeah, I think it's actually started way before I got to RISD physically. So when I applied, I was living in London and ironically, much like it is now, I couldn't really attend tours in person or open studios. So I was trawling through the internet all the time to try and find bits and pieces of what I thought a RISD graduate experience would be like. And I remember distinctly stumbling upon one of the earlier V1 issues back when it was the perfect bound volume of grad only writing. And I was really excited by it because I had always loved writing, but it seemed to get stuck in either like a really tangential lane of my work or playing more of a supplemental role to design practice. So I think I was so keen to join V1 because it seemed like the purpose of it was to get those two parts and have them coexist as one sort of endeavor. And so I think also knowing that the editorial team, being on it and part of it and not knowing, you know, where the other students were coming from, it was exciting because it was a multifaceted position. And I think like going into grad school personally, I wanted to find a sort of extracurricular that I knew that part of it, I did feel qualified enough to confidently contribute to something and also know that there were so many other realms of that role where I was ready to learn along the way, whether that was from Jen or from the rest of the team. So yeah, that it felt like a really good role. I think when it popped up, I was like, this is the one. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's such an important thing to generalize your comment there for other people considering grad school at RISD, just to realize that your program will be your center, it'll be your core, you'll be with your studio mates and in your program, but there are so many other kinds of spokes on the wheel that you can take advantage of at RISD and other academic support offices like our own, like the Nature Lab or the exhibitions office or the career center where grad students work, the research office. There's really great graduate assistantships where you can, as you said, Irina, kind of take advantage of the skills you already have and also learn new ones and kind of deepen your knowledge sort of that are skills and interests that you wouldn't otherwise be able to bring in, right? So wanting to have that breadth as well. Um, and you had a pretty rich experience with V1. Talk a little bit, if you would, about what your relationships were like with fellow editors or with some of the writers that you worked with, and what the kind of qualitative sense of the work was for you.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I think, to be honest, coming into it, the graphic design part, which is part of my professional background, that came more naturally because I was used to the production side of publishing. And I had, fabulous co-editors like Tiger on that end. But I think the real sort of surprise and learning along the way part was to do with the editing side of the job. So I think before V1, I guess I would describe myself more as a very selfish writer, in the sense that I couldn't imagine how spending energy to help someone else write the best version of what's in their head would be just as fulfilling, if not more fulfilling, than perfecting, my own written work. And so, I had limited experience shepherding people's work through that sort of pipeline, but I think in my head when I came to V1, I thought that it would be, light on the conceptual feedback and then a lot of heavy comma moving and stuff like that. But it's actually it requires tons of different muscles, and I would say more social muscles than grammatical ones. So I think, figuring out how to bring a piece of writing or, other media, mixed media that we were doing to fruition, I think it would really always depend on, at its core, trying to understand what the writer hopes for the piece to be and for it to do and say. And then, on the other hand, how that matches up with the publications philosophy and the particular physical issue that we're issuing as a body of work. And that writer's hope is sometimes aligned with what they say they want at the beginning, and sometimes it kind of changes along the way, or it needs to reveal itself through many conversations. Sometimes those conversations are, 1 week, and sometimes they're 2 semesters. So it really is amazing. It depends on who you're working with. I think that's a really unpredictable and exciting part. And, I found myself working with sometimes professors that were decades older and wiser than me. And then sometimes I was working with people who had actually not been comfortable at all writing, but wanted to try. And so that's, a totally different approach to try and arrive at the same goal. So I think the tasks that I learned in trying to become a good editor were often just as varied as the writers that we were helping out. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I love that social versus grammatical muscle point. I think we'll keep that in our thinking. We're actually just with this year's team, we're just starting to work with your notes on editing.
Nice.
So I'll add that note to your notes that are now part of our kind of handbook for the publication. Do you see any way in which, I hope so, do you see any way in which your writing and editing and designing that you did with V1 are, maybe carried into your future? If you don't mind sharing with us what you're up to now, that would be great, because it may be outside the topic, but it'd be interesting to hear. And then, how you perceive your future career and work. And then also, if you would like to just share with us a little bit about the article that you wrote last spring about the kind of nature of the graduate studio space.
Yeah, in terms of how it is, my experience at V1 fits into my current trajectory. I think, well, the trajectory overall is kind of all over the place because of graduating in this past year. But I think, I've always had a view of having a very cobbled together career. So lots of projects from all over the place, pieced together in a way that sort of fits under an umbrella of a design philosophy and writing philosophy. And so in that sense, I think being able to see the inner workings of a small but mighty and, determined editorial team was really valuable, in the sense that I think going forward, writing is, again, going to always be a part of my practice. So seeing the other side of, or inside the black box, as it were, helps a lot in terms of putting yourself out there and pitching to different publications, knowing that the process is kind of reliant on how, how every publication does things. And I think I just didn't really understand that before. And so it was much more of like a try for something, get rejected, never try again, or, like you have to be a prodigy and they'll accept you and then you're going to write for the New Yorker tomorrow, something like that. But there's a lot in between. And yeah, I guess that's the way it fits in. I think writing, again, it's just one of many things. I'm in Seoul right now, getting ready to go to bed. I'm at Hyundai for like a research residency style thing where I'm trying to talk to executives in an automobile industry about passive energy, which is an interesting challenge, but fun. And, again, dealing with and working with many different types of people with different perspectives and goals. Like, again, that goes back to trying to put together a cohesive publication by working with tons and tons of different individuals. So that is also something that I would say carries over into day-to-day interactions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love the idea that, I think V1 does offer this opportunity to work together as a team that, will happen here and there in various other projects at RISD, but it's unique in that way that it's a sustained year-long effort together as a group. And I also really appreciate, I haven't thought about this the way until you just said it, that as you go out into the world and write and publish and pitch stories, what's going on the other side. You understand how fluid and variable and subjective that other side might be. It's not like a bunch of gatekeepers who open it or close it, that there's nuances in there that would allow you to kind of, do the kinds of things you want to do out in the world because you understand what's going on there. That's great. Thank you for that. And also just hearing you talk about, the communication with various stakeholders in this new position, I think is, something you learn more about at V1, but also something that the Center for Arts and Language as a whole is very focused on, understanding different audiences, learning how to be persuasive, and kind of make your case for something that people may not understand, your art, your design, your values, and so on. So thanks for sharing that too. All right, we miss you. Thanks so much for joining us.
So much.
You don't seem like you're there in the middle of the night at all.
No.
Yeah, wonderful to see you. Thanks so much, and we'll catch up soon. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I could stay for the whole thing, but I'll have to head in.
Okay. Take care, Irina. Great to see you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Switching gears a little bit, I'm going to share with you my screen and show you the home page of the Center for Arts and Language website. And I'll put that link in too in a second to the chat. So the Center for Arts and Language is a physical space, as you see behind me, but we're not open this year. We are open online, and we're doing online tutoring, which is through Zoom, which is working quite well. The kind of work we do has transferred really, really nicely. If you do want to check out our site later, I would suggest having a look at these resource guides, which are organized by the kinds of common tasks that RISD students work on, and have videos and links and handouts that we've developed over the years. I'll just point out in particular the grad thesis book guide, which includes several different books within there that are about writing your thesis book, about designing your thesis book, and so on. So it'll give you sort of a flavor for what the grad thesis experience is about. But all kinds of materials on here, writing about your work, speaking about the work, the very kinds of things that we do together as a group of tutors. And then I'll also point out Meet the Staff and Tutors, where you can see our staff is made up of 5 professionals, myself and Meredith and Maya and Peter and Anne, and then about 20 graduate and undergraduate tutors. There's Ollie, and Ollie will be talking more about their work in a second. But we have a really amazing team of peer tutors who work together with you on any kind of communication project at any stage of the process. So you can come in when you just got an assignment to write an artist statement and have no idea where to start, or you can come in with a final rehearsal of a talk that you're giving and get really engaged feedback. And then the homepage, more about A&L rather, describes more about our mission and the various ways we work, and the theory and pedagogy of multiliteracies, which is a kind of broad social justice oriented approach to thinking about literacies, and all kinds of information here about all that we do. If you're interested in becoming a tutor, there's also information here with the postings for our grad assistantship, so you can understand more about that. But generally, we're open to all students, and we have about 2,000 appointments a year where students come into this space that you see behind me and sit down together with a tutor and share their work and ideas. So Ollie, you want to unmute and share a little bit about what you do as a tutor and what people could expect if they were to come in. So I'll start in the same way as I did with Arena and ask I'm always curious about this myself. What drew you to become a tutor at the center?
Yeah, I started kind of tutoring in a very non-academic capacity when I was really still in high school. Tutoring friends in math and writing, and then sometimes possibly helping out with students at the library that I volunteered at. And then when I was an undergrad, I really started to do more of that towards the end when I started teaching math workshops to middle schoolers. So I've always really loved the role of teaching that's very communicative. It's not a feeling that you're telling someone how they should be working, but a feeling of trying to meet them where they are and help them in the best way that you're able to. And I think that when I was looking at the tutoring posting for A&L, I was still in Canada and I hadn't actually visited RISD yet. And I was just reading everything that you wrote, and I found that it was really resonating with how I felt about communicating and teaching and tutoring. So I was like, yeah, I should apply. And it was a great decision. I love it here.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about, so similar to Arena too, you kind of came with these skills and found a place to make use of them and enjoy them at RISD. Can you talk a little bit about what tutoring is like? Maybe you're thinking more about the online experience of it now, but what happens in a session? How do you engage with a student writer, speaker, designer?
Yeah, for the sessions, I like to start with if the person hasn't been to the center before, making sure that they know that the center is not only for writing, but for all forms of communication, because I think that sometimes gets understated, not by us, but as word travels by mouth about tutoring. So then if it's a piece of writing, I'll kind of ask, like, what do you need feedback on, and try to get at what specifically the tutee actually needs, because sometimes someone may say just grammar, but you really want to know what they're concerned about specifically. What aspects of grammar are concerning them in their work? Are they worried about being unclear, or do they want to just know if they've made grammatical errors while writing because it would make them feel better to know? A lot of times there are really lovely process-oriented sessions that I always really love, where the work has not really been written out yet, but there's so much internal thought process and planning behind it that it's really lovely to work with someone and figure it out together. And within a session, I'll spend time probably looking at a person's work, as well as a lot of talking with the tutee. There's never really any moment in a session that's not actively trying to work together to improve someone's work. And I really do emphasize that it's very collaborative. I don't want to just tell someone, here's what your writing should be like, here's what your presentation should be like. It has to be about making sure that their voice is able to shine through.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for emphasizing that. That's really important. And again, it relates to what Irina said, that we're not really there to sort of correct or standardize or impose anything. It's about making sure that people say what they want to say in the way that they want to say it, and helping them do that the best we can by being responsive. I like how frequently you've used the word love in our short time already. Can you talk more about like what it is you love about doing this, and maybe even draw on you know, a particular engagement or exchange that you had with someone, you know, that was particularly deep or meaningful to you?
Yeah, there's an inherent fulfillment in knowing that you've helped someone with something that they were struggling with. That always just makes you feel good and proud, happy. But also just seeing the diversity of work that comes through. There's like a lot of academic writing, but there will also be creative writing, creative nonfiction, poetry sometimes, and you have people doing presentations, people bringing in their thesis book that can have multiple styles within the writing all at once. Sessions concerned about visual communication and form that matches with some part of written communication are always really lovely. I had a session back in spring where a student brought in a stack of books and was like, I know exactly what I'm interested in, but I don't know how to make it a cohesive topic. Can we talk about it? Here are all the references that I have that we can look through together so that we can be on the same like level of understanding this idea. There's also one that I really liked that was to practice a teaching session. A lot of grad students enroll in the teaching certificate, and one of the courses involves a practice round. We do like 30 minutes lecture, and to brainstorm about that and see like, is this idea that the student was super familiar with being effectively communicated to a potential audience who knows nothing? It was really good for me because I did know nothing about the topic. But I always remember that session because the tutee brought in the activity that they were going to show and had me do that, and that was lovely.
Yeah, that's it. What I'm responding to most maybe about what you're saying is just how much you get to engage with people, how deeply you get to engage with people's ideas and have your kind of minds in the same place together. That's such a rare, you know, experience to have so much time, focused time together with someone else, thinking about something together, learning about it together. And then also the range of exposure you get that you're talking about to so many different ideas. And, you know, again, these academic spaces, co-works, the Nature Lab, the Center for Arts and Language, et cetera, that you're all able to learn more about in these sessions, are those interdisciplinary spaces where you really get to know a wide range of thinking and ideas and people. So thanks for that. And Ollie, I know you're in your last year now and writing your thesis and not out in the world yet, but do you have thoughts on how this work might you know, create a continuum and how you might carry it forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely improved every aspect of communication skills in my life, as well as improving my own writing skills. I personally want to kind of stay in academia, so having a lot of time to experience different learning styles and like refine how to communicate the same idea in multiple ways to find like what's most effective for a particular person to understand what I'm trying to say has been really useful, and that will always be something that I try to do. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Ollie.
Thank you for having me here.
Wonderful to have you here, and you're welcome to stay during Anne's part too. And I'll remind anyone, everyone who's here, if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to share, feel free to do that in the Q&A at any time.
Okay.
So thanks again, Ollie. Anne, thank you for being here. You are perhaps to me, the person who connects most with all RISD graduate students through the work that you do in supporting the written thesis. And I'm excited for everyone to hear from you a little bit about that experience and how you conceive it and share your feelings and thoughts and experience with it. So take it away, Anne. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you for warming the space, everyone, so generously to what is most vital here in this remarkable center that we have. So yes, greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to be among you. And so I am Anne West, and I would say that what brings me to this forum today is my longstanding commitment to the master's thesis. I've been here over 2 decades, and I've always been a champion of this process. And just a brief view of who I am, I would say that I'm a listener, and I'm also a mappist, and I'm very committed to, as both Ali and Jan and Irina stated, to listening deeply to what our grads want to write about, to not impose a view, but actually to elicit the view. And so what does the role of the mappist do is to enter a web of connections, some of them apparent on the surface, some of them deeply registered beneath the surface, and to allow for rivers and tributaries of thought to flow in and out, to discern patterns and interconnections. So just a brief view of, like, you know, how I dial in. Not that this is about me, but what does it mean to facilitate this? So I'm on faculty here in the Division of Grad Studies, and teach various thesis writing seminars that are cross-disciplinary in focus. And I also am in the Center for Arts and Language 1 day a week as faculty mentor. And so we do have here at RISD, as Jen beautifully explained, a vibrant culture of creative critical writing. And it's a commitment across all departments, all 18 departments, and obviously all grads, to produce a graduate written thesis. So at RISD, the thesis is viewed as integral to the studio practice. It's not a sideshow. It's a parallel generative practice to support our visual explorations. And many would argue, I believe, that it in fact deepens that practice, is a chance to dig deep into a focus and to do something that is strongly on behalf of the work. So I like to frame the opportunity as one that allows us to see what writing can do for the work. So you'll write as you design, as you make, pulling from everything, from details rooted in your work, from research and cultural trajectories that fascinate you, from email correspondence, comments logged from critiques, from stories, from your observations. It's an opportunity to find a voice that authentically takes root, offering a platform to stand on an argument. So the thesis resists the formulaic. There are many forms that the document takes within the departmental priorities and approval. So from the academic thesis to the monograph, to the project document, to the mosaic essay, the artist's book, or some hybrid of all, the thesis is a powerful showcase of your work and documentation. And some refer to it as creating an operations manual for their practice. And your thesis will be more than a private archive. It persists and takes form. It's searchable from the library database. Many are posted on our digital commons. It also persists as a blueprint, inaugurating a vision and groundwork for the future. I think, as Arena spoke to, it roots a method, articulating a working process and practice. It can serve as a monograph. Some go on to publish their thesis, so it is helps to develop a public and publishable reflection on the thesis body of work. Also a pedagogy, creating a philosophy or curricular orientation for a teaching practice. It establishes a research trajectory, setting up a basis for facilitating dialogue with other thought leaders eventually, and as a catalyst where you might serve as role model or change agent. Now, over the 20 years of being at RISD, what's been so exciting is to see how the scope of graduate study has grown. It's enlarged considerably. And now there are numerous departmental workshops to support grads in thesis writing. And there are also many resources that are available. Jen, in opening up the ANL website, featured a listing of resources offered. One which is notable is this book of thesis books that Jen and a team of editors spearheaded. And so those various thesis typologies are featured there, as well as the contents of some theses. And there's also an index of graduate theses compiled by our research librarian, posted on the Fleet Library website, and also a master's thesis handbook. So you're not, I know when I did my doctorate, I had no clue where to begin. There really weren't any resources, which is one of the reasons that I was committed to supporting this at RISD. Today I'd like to, first of all, there are so many remarkable theses archived in our Fleet Library. But out of respect for our time, I'd like to feature one. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And here is a thesis by Bob Wilkinson, who graduated RISD with an MFA in graphic design in 2014. And so the title, as you can see here, is In Development, Attempts to Decolonize. So Bob came to RISD as a already well-established graphic designer in England. He had worked extensively in Nigeria to support the execution of a number of curricular materials that would serve learning communities there. But, if you will permit me, I'd like to read briefly from his abstract. He says, Victor Papanak's book, Design for the Real World outlines the responsibility of the designer and the implications of designing within a particular social, cultural, economic, and political context. He describes ways in which designers can engage their skills for the needs of developing countries and also the issues that can arise when they transfer their own design ideology and idiosyncrasies to that specific culture. In 2012, a growing awareness of these issues caused me to pause my practice in Nigeria and to question whether I, a white British designer working in a former British colony, had imposed my own Eurocentric design agenda onto those I had trained and the work I had produced, and whether this could be interpreted as neo-colonist behavior. So coming to RISD was the effort to enter that space of the pause, to reflect, to question, to unpack perhaps an unexamined history, and to develop a forms and a methodology for hopefully re-entering this process. So Bob's book is set up as a series of questions. He positions himself within the questions, seeking realignment. And here's one moment in the thesis where he's asking very specifically, is a reflexive practice possible? Looking at the texts of Pierre Bourdieu and Anthony Giddens, specifically with regard to the term reflexivity, and then he performs his own act of reinterpretation upon this text. One sample of the depth of intelligence and care, of meeting an issue with honest confrontation. As I say, there are countless other documents, and this is featured, or I feature it here as a kind of case study, a sample. So as I said at the beginning, I think of myself as a mappist, opening webs of thought connections with grads to begin to discern patterns that emerge from works completed over 1, 2, or 3 years, and to contemplate the various themes and tributaries that flow in and out, bringing to light those interconnections. So in the seminars and in the sessions in A&L, we explore what is inflected in this studio work and honor the multivalence. And my practice is dominantly to set up these probes or prompts to activate the multiple angles of accessing these connections. So what I'd like to do, if you're willing, is to suggest that we do some writing together based on 2 prompts, and we'll engage these for about 3 minutes each, leaving room for some time for Q&A at the end. Okay, so prompt 1, called Shifting the Baseline. Very often what brings us to graduate school is a desire to build toward new ways of working or thinking. and in doing so, to expand out of our comfort zone. What is your desire for entering graduate school? How do you wish to shift your baseline, to expand your practice, and perhaps even grow into your vulnerabilities? So shifting your baseline. These don't have to be fully formed sentences. They can be quick notes to self. Let's spend one more minute on this, and then we'll move on to the second prompt. Okay, so the second prompt is your art design statement in 6 words. And this prompt is inspired by Ernest Hemingway's famous challenge. So he made a wager that he could write an entire story in 6 words. With this commitment to pith and parsimony, he wrote, "For sale, baby shoes, never worn." It is said that he considered this his best work. So my prompt to you is, so working within these constraints, please write a version of an art or design statement in 6 words. So I realize this is kind of quick and dirty, but I'm also aware that there are 20 messages in the chat. So I'm going to bow out now. Thank you. And we hope to see you at RISD. Okay, Jen.
Thank you, Anne, so much. So yeah, just to reflect on a few things that Anne said, you know, the idea that writing is so expansive and that it could take form as, or begin in, or even end in emails or notes or a set of questions is really important, I think, for everyone to hear, because the the idea of a thesis when we have, or dissertation, when we have traditional kinds of humanities, assumptions about it can feel perhaps intimidating or even inapt for an art and design education. And I think the way that you've characterized this kind of work at RISD is important for anyone to see and understand, and that it's so expansive and so varied. And the informality of the prompts that you just gave, and the kind of open-endedness and the discovery that we can find in just writing for a few minutes, just reflecting, just conversing. Sometimes that's enough. We're not even looking for something that is polished, conclusive, even persuasive. I love that you chose Bob's thesis to highlight, because I remember so clearly how he said, I don't have answers, I have questions. And that's the beginning and the end, right? Of course, he asked them very deeply. But I think it captures the spirit of what the graduate thesis is about and what it can be. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Jen, do we have any questions, thoughts from our guests?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
So
I'll invite them one more time.
Yes, we do have some time, left in this session. So feel free to type your questions in the Q&A section, or if you would like to say your questions out loud, you can just raise your hands and I can give you the ability to speak, and we can hear you.
Okay.
Don't be shy. I'm sure if you have a question, others probably have the same question.
Okay, I'm going to put my my email address in the chat here.
Perfect.
If anyone would like to get in touch and ask questions later about the Center for Arts and Language, the graduate written thesis, V1, please feel free to reach out. We're here and we're available to you as you make these, do this research and make these decisions. And it's been great to spend some time with you this morning. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Ollie.
Oh, it looks like we have a question.
All right.
And I just want to add to this session, along with all of our sessions for the Grad Open House, are being recorded. So we will be sharing that with everybody. They'll be archived on the website. Ollie and Irina, I'll be sending you a release form if that's okay. But we will be, you can look back at this. So use this as a resource. Okay, let's see here. The question. They're saying thank you. It's been a very enriching session. I'm glad. It has been said at the beginning that languages were an important part of the grad school. Can you develop a little bit on this?
Sure. So Erica, thanks. I'm not sure if you're asking about language in general, just the connection between words and images, or words and objects, or speaking and writing and studio practice, or if you're speaking about multiple languages, but I'll try to answer both. We find that art and design schools are very verbal places. There's a whole lot of talking going on in critiques, in studios, and more so too in this environment as we've been working virtually. We're seeing that writing is becoming more present, speaking is becoming more present. The work itself is not available to us when we're in virtual or remote education spaces. We'll go back to being physical again. But I think that out in the world, when you're communicating about your work after graduate school, those same kinds of communication skills, the ability to talk about your work, its rationale, your motivation, your process, its formal qualities, is really important. So language, art and design are physical, material disciplines, but language around that is really important. And we have so many different resources to support the linguistic aspects. RISD is a very international, especially the graduate programs are very international, and we have a lot of students who speak multiple languages. So we do think a lot about the opportunity of being in a multilingual environment, and the richness of language and languages as means to communication, and also as material. A lot of students actually engage with multiple languages in their work. There are graduate courses that have been taught around that, particularly by one of our staff, Maya Krinsky, who's a faculty member and the Associate Director for Multilingual Learning at RISD. So we have a lot of support for multilingual students who are thinking conceptually around speaking various languages, but also just the practical aspects of communicating in an English speaking school, and producing, say, academic papers in English, maybe for the first time. So lots of practical resources, and also sort of philosophies and values around the importance of multilingualism, in particular in art and design contexts, in art and design schools and fields. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, of course, please reach out, and happy to talk more about it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
And, I think that question just about rounds us out.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for you and your office, and Irina's not here, for participating all the way from Seoul. We can't thank you enough. And again, this session will be recorded, and it'll be posted to the website. If anybody has any questions, you can always email admissions@risd.edu. Jen did put her email address in there, and we can definitely direct questions to you if we get them to the admissions email address.
Okay. Thanks so much. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Ollie. Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you. All
Take
right.
care, everybody.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.